Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Thunder, and this is Tenor Talks. And that is my focus on saxophone, all things saxophone, focusing on jazz saxophone. And my co host is Dr. Robert Brooks, who is also a faculty member at The Ohio State University. This show is all about saxophones, about musicianship, practice habits. It's about a career in music. Make sure you go back and check out the previous episodes and support the show. Likes are free. Comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And those of you that are viewing this on YouTube, you can super chat, unless you're on the second channel, which is not monetized. Or you can Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Dr. Thunder Music, all one word. Spell out the word doctor. So this is going to be part 2 in Does Equipment Actually Matter? We did a part 1. Last couple weeks, we did not do a show. The Jazz Festival was last week, and that was a huge deal. A lot of heavy lifting. Very successful festival. And so we didn't have a show that week. And the previous week was spring break. And though the word break is in spring break, I did not have a break. It was all kinds of crazy stuff going on. I got 20 things going on at the same time, but it's good. We're starting to slow down a little bit. We're starting to get towards the end of the semester, and juries and all of that kind of stuff. And so, yeah. So that's what's up. So this is a second part of Does Equipment Actually Matter? So, Tenor Talks. Let's go. What's happening?
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right.
So,
So, your last couple weeks, give us a rundown.
yeah, it's been busy. You weren't kidding about the no breaks. So, I did. I know we talked and we did a show earlier about doubling, and I've been doing a ton of shows recently. So, first weekend of March, I had a run of The Sound of Music at the Palace Theater here in downtown Columbus. Then the weekend after that, I did a performance of Beauty and the Beast. The weekend after that, I opened a run of Leonard Bernstein's On the Town in Dayton. And then the week after that was Jazz Fest.
Mm.
And it has just been going crazy. Just a lot of stuff going on. But it's fun, right? Always one of my favorite quotes, favorite phrases, better busy than bored. So I would rather be busy than be bored. So,
In the music industry, you
but yeah,
wonder
so I've
how
been
it's
doing that.
possible for people to be bored.
Yeah, I know.
Mm.
But and then so that's been good doing some performing. We've the jazz festival was a ton of fun. The jazz club at Ohio State had a really excellent saxophone player from the Cleveland area come down with his quintet. It's Chris Coles. And then obviously our festival headliner, Carmen Bradford, was awesome to get to hear her. It was great to get to perform with you as a part of the festival. It's always a pleasure to be able to share the stage with you and our other faculty. And just running a mile a minute. I go back to doing On the Town this weekend, and then I'm also doing that uh, next weekend as well. And so that's I subbed out an entire weekend of that performance for Jazz Fest, but that's a 4 weekend run. It's something, a couple of days of double shows. So I think it's like 18 performances of that show. So,
And
which is
what is
very
it?
double heavy.
Is when is the show? Are there Thursday shows or is it just Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
So this weekend it's Friday. Well, this weekend is kind of I guess a little bit different. So this weekend is shows just on Saturday, and then next weekend is Thursday night, Friday night, and then a double show on Saturday, and then that's the end of the run, and we're not having shows on Easter because
Okay,
the
right.
9th is Easter. So, and then beyond that, man, I don't know if I'm able to even like process what's going on after that. But yeah, semester's winding down, and that'll be good stuff. So, how about you? What's been going on for you last few weeks?
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. I've been playing a lot at Ginger Rabbit and streaming those shows. So folks that are watching, you can come back and at 6:15 to 9:30 to see Dr. Thunder Quartet, and we're doing Standards Volume 4. We played 4 dates at the Ginger Rabbit this month, all
Wow.
Thursdays. And so that's been great. So I'm looking forward to that. So as soon as the show is over, I got to get my suit on, get packed up, and head over and get all my equipment set up, streaming stuff. It's all kind of lots of stuff going on. Uh, so that and then um, a, a bunch of other gigs. I honestly I can't even tell you what the gigs were. It's just a lot of stuff over the last probably 3 weeks. Um,
Mm.
uh, but then, of course, the end of the festival, we played together on Friday with the faculty group and Carmen. And then on Sunday, we featured Dave Powers and Josh Beatty on a show with the Ohio Show Band, which I direct. And I play bass in also. Um, and it was called Steely Dan Meets Billy Joel. And you were in the horn section for that, and I appreciate that. That was a lot of work for one
For one
performance.
show.
Yeah, but all the bells and whistles, video sync on everything, and in-ear monitors, and playing with clicks, and there's production sequences for each selection, cues, all this kind of stuff. And I thought that the band played well, and we brought in some really good, really
Yeah.
great guests. So
Yeah, that
yeah,
was a lot of fun. It was to be involved. Yeah. Thank you.
and then meanwhile, I'm the MD for a production, an original production that has two shows, and one show's on Saturday and the other's on Sunday. This weekend I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
We sort of did our kind of a dress rehearsal on Tuesday, though we have a run through, almost a full run through of the production on Saturday before we actually do the show. And that show's called In Her G. And this has been interesting because there's a live band that I'm playing with, but that's only really for two selections, maybe something at the beginning of the show while people are walking in. But two selections during the show, working with some really great singers for that. But the rest of it has been, I've done all of this massive editing and creating music for all of the different scenes and sound effects. So I'm triggering sounds and I'm triggering songs and all this kind of stuff throughout the entire production. So it's cool. It's been a lot, but it's it's
Yeah.
it's cool. So that's pretty much what's been going
that's
on, and then
awesome.
of course teaching and everything else. But yeah, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No.
Well, cool. That sounds great.
All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump back into our previous discussion about equipment, and I encourage folks to go back and check out the first episode, so we're not having to sort of repeat ourselves. We talked quite a bit about saxophone stuff, and so we're going to talk more about sort of maybe some gadgets and some other accessories and things associated with saxophone, and also we'll talk a bit about maybe clarinet stuff, and I'll talk a little bit about flute stuff as far as some setup stuff with that, and kind of go from there. So, where you want to get started?
Well, we can talk through the saxophone stuff first. I just think
Sure.
from a branding standpoint, that's what people are here for. and yeah, there's been a couple things, a couple kind of routes that we can go down. I don't know if you want to talk about some of the Reed stuff. We can maybe start there.
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay, great. So reeds have kind of been something that I've probably been playing with recently more than I ever have. I kind of spent a long time, and I think this is an important aspect of any of the gear. I'm sure we said this last time. It is always about you. It's always the player that does the work. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of an important thing. Everybody's going to try to get your money. Everybody's going to try to do that kind of thing, and here's why my thing is the best, and you want to make sure that with any kind of equipment that you're always coming back to that you are the one that you're the thing that matters the most. I think all of your equipment combined is maybe 30% of your sound, of your playing ability, of all that stuff. It's mostly the player. Having said that, equipment is designed to help you do whatever it is that you want to do, sound how you want to sound, play how you want to play, theoretically easier. Um, and so that's kind of some of the stuff. And the big thing with that is reeds. My teacher in grad school, um, you know, I think just really hated reeds. And so his way that he expressed that was he would just play reeds until they absolutely died and would say that, oh, the reed's not bad. You just need to learn how to play it. And I agree with that, kind of from a fundamental standpoint but I think kind of the negative of that from my side was I spent a long time not looking at different cuts of reeds, certainly not looking at synthetic reeds, which is what I know we want to talk about a little bit today. That it was very much just get a reed out of the box, and he didn't even work on reeds, and it was just play. It either plays or it doesn't, and you need to sound good. And I think that was helpful for a certain point, but now I'm kind of at the point now where it's like, well, what are some of these other options for reeds, both in terms of brands and cuts and types of cane, but also on the synthetic side, because that's just the concept of having a stable reed is a pretty big plus. And I certainly spent a long time, fighting reeds, and it's like, well, to a certain point, I want this thing to start working for me a little bit. So I know you've been playing Leger reeds for a long time. How long have you been using synthetic reeds in general?
Well, in general, I've been playing synthetics for about 25 years. So
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
I haven't
with
known
the
about
synthetics.
synthetic reeds for that long. Sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, about 25 years with synthetics. I in my sort of road to synthetics was a bit bumpy. The only reason that I started looking at synthetics was because I was having such an issue with cane reeds, and I'm very hard on reeds. So I was playing, one practice session, and that was all that reed can handle. And then, of course, a gig, one reed per gig, and that reed it was just totally done. Now, I've never been one to do any of the extra stuff, like you're supposed to break it in, you're supposed to do this, soak it in this, and when you're done, do this to it, and all that kind of stuff. I've never been one to do any of that stuff, and that stuff is very frustrating to me, actually, because I want to focus on playing the instrument, and as a multi-instrumentalist, playing a lot of instruments that have reeds on them, it becomes even much more cumbersome to be having to to nurse every freaking reed, and to try to keep everything the proper amount wet and all like this, so that it doesn't warp. You'd grab it and that's all warped, and now you gotta all of that kind of stuff. So on top of that, I was having a really bad time with reeds, and plus I could only play like maybe 3 out of a box of 15 or something. Only about 3 would work, so it became expensive. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? So at first I was like, let me try fiber cell. My saxophone professor, he kind of pulled my coattail to it. I was like, okay, let me see what's up with this. And at first when I tried it, I hated it. I couldn't do it. I went right back to cane, and then had even worse experience with cane. And then I was like, okay, let me see if I can make this work. So I made it work. But the fiber cell thing is interesting because there's a lot of, as consistent as you want the reeds to be, I experienced quite a bit of inconsistency with the fiber cell reeds. Now they were still way more consistent than cane. And when one played, it would play for, 2 months, 3 months, like that. Right. But that was an issue. So then I'd say, and this really happened during the time I was working on my doctorate. So starting about 2014, I started playing on Ligier Signature, 2014, 2015. I started playing on Ligier Signature for classical saxophone,
Mm.
just for classical saxophone. And then slowly, the I started playing on signature reeds for soprano saxophone. Then I started playing on them for let's see here, let's see, bass clarinet, bari sax, so it started spreading. But for whatever, and then alto even, but for whatever reason, tenor was resistant. Like I couldn't get the Ligier to work for me.
Mm.
Um, and then and then I switched back to a V16 after having played on a Gary Sugel custom piece that he made for me for, I don't know, about 3 years. I switched back to hard rubber V16, and for whatever reason, and at that time I was still playing on signatures, it just worked. Then they came out
Mm.
with the American cut reeds, and that was even better. So I'd say I've been playing on them on everything for about 3 years, 4 years, but have been on
Oh,
synthetics in general for about 25 years.
wow. Okay. Yeah, my kind of introduction for a lot of these synthetic reeds was on doubles, just because I didn't want to have to deal with working on clarinet or bass clarinet reeds and the stability and stuff. But I kind of had this in my mind. It was like, well, it's good enough for clarinet, but it's not for my saxophone playing. I'm too picky. And I think really it was because I wasn't current on the synthetic options. So I had tried
Mm,
one fiber cell, in like 2010 or something like that,
right,
and or even earlier than that. And then it was like, oh well, that's not the greatest read I've ever played, so these must be terrible. Let me move on.
right.
And I think that is sometimes I think it's kind of something that people decide what they think about whatever product. And I think part of certainly for both of us as educators, I think that's an element of staying relevant and up to date, because I have students that come into the office and what do you think about this? And for me to not know that stuff, not to have to be able to guide them, I think in some way is kind of letting them down. So but really it was through you with was trying some of these the Legers and certainly the American cut, and I was blown away with that. Certainly took, you have to adjust, you have to make some changes and stuff, but I've been enjoying that. That's what's on my tenor right now. Uh, but I had been playing the Legers, like I said, on bass clarinet and on B flat clarinet for a little while now, and I really, really uh, am liking those. So, but then today in our jazz studio class, I use a certain brand of ligature that's made by a company called Silverstein Works, and they make these really unique ligatures that are chords. So it's one continuous loop of a very special kind of material. I love these ligatures. I use them on alto, on tenor, on my clarinet, on my bass clarinet, all over the place. I think they're fantastic. They're pretty customizable in terms of how big they are. They have other like options for variability. So I think about like on this ligature, I can move some of these bars around and it changes, slight changes for sure, but makes a difference. And they actually recently also came out with a new synthetic reed. And so they were kind enough to send me a bunch of these. I think they sent me like 25 or 30 reeds of their new synthetic. These are clarinets. They're called ambi poly. It's a new material that they innovated and they invented that's supposed to be kind of and it was interesting to kind of hear you kind of some of your points in studio class today, because a lot of what they were talking about we've made a material that is a lot like cane but better, And I thought your point was really interesting. It's like, well, I don't necessarily want the stuff about Kane. Like, it's not
Right.
like, you know, and I think about this, you know, Kane reeds are made out of the material they're made out of because that's what people had. Right. There's nothing that's like, oh, I love how it does this or this. And then we're used to that. But I thought it was kind of, I thought what you said, and you know, if you want to elaborate on it, you're certainly more than
Yeah.
welcome to. But I thought it was interesting talking like there are elements of Kane I don't want replicated. And, you know, obviously having it be more consistent, having it be less affected by, you know, weather conditions or whatever is a part of that. But even some of the other stuff they were talking about, like water retention and stuff, it's like, well, you know, I kind of view that as a bad thing. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way to look at it. And I think a lot of people that go to synthetic, and I still kind of consider myself in this mindset. Well, I want a cane reed that is more consistent. I don't necessarily want a synthetic reed. And I think it's a fine detail, but it is a little bit of a difference. Um, so I thought that was interesting. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that stuff at all.
Yeah. So one of my an actual criticism initially that I had of the Legers is that their whole thing was, you know, the read after you play it for 30 minutes, like a regular read, it sort of starts to play differently. And
Mm-hmm.
and my thing is, I don't want it to play differently. I just want it to play, right? Um
Yeah.
and and so then I'm sort of expanding that sort of, I don't know if I call it a criticism or maybe just an observation, that, you know, I don't really want a read to do some of the more negative things in my mind that wood does. So the
Yeah.
the one of the minus things of something that is made out of an organic material is deterioration. Okay? I don't want that. I don't want something that is going to deteriorate. I want something that is a material that will vibrate in a similar or as close to identical fashion as is an ideal cane reed, but that doesn't do any of the organic stuff. That's what I've been in
Mm.
search of. And so one thing I thought was interesting, with the presentation earlier today, um, and I thought he's super knowledgeable. I totally was like, I'm totally going to try those reads, and that's definitely going to happen. But one thing I thought was interesting is it seems as though much of the development of it was, um, to be able to market to people that they don't want a synthetic reed. You know,
Mm.
they're marketing to people that all they've played on is cane reeds. Now this is smart because most people are still playing cane reeds.
Yeah.
My point was, I'm a guy that has been playing on synthetic for all this time, and then my question is, why should I switch to your reed? What is the advantage of me playing on your particular kind of reed without the without considering the more cane like stuff? Because I've already, I've already gotten over that. That was the stuff that I was trying to get away from, you know.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind of my
it's
point.
it's interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think we come to this from opposite viewpoints. Because I still consider myself as someone who's, you know, playing cane reeds, and like, you know, and I have that Leger on tenor, but I don't have one on my alto, so I'm still playing cane reeds on alto. And
Right.
I'm kind of looking at it as like, oh, this is like a better version of Kane. And it's kind of interesting that you're on the opposite side of saying, like, well, why is this a better synthetic reed? And I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was a good, you know, there was kind of good stuff to ask and to kind of see how they thought. So, but you know, the more I kind of look into this, the more impressed I am with how material science has caught up. Things
Yeah.
are able to do. the Ambi Poly Alto reed that they sent us in a size, their jazz reed in a size 3, absolutely floored me. Really, really. I was very, very impressed with that. And I played some of their B flat clarinet reeds, and those are also really, really good. I really like the Leger European cut that I have, but those are really good. I'm going to talk to them about sending maybe some Barry and bass clarinet ones as well, because I'd be interested in checking those out. But very interesting, and like I said, and it's a good to stay on top of that stuff. You kind of got to find the balance. I know some people who get, are drowning in gear and they get way too focused on, I have 10 different mouthpieces and I rotate through them, on one horn, or I
Uh,
do all this stuff, or kind of even what you're talking about with reeds where, I keep these in Listerine, or I keep these in water, or
oh,
I do all this stuff. And
put
I
it in
think
the
you can,
microwave for
you
3 seconds.
yeah, or I know a guy who would like boil them,
Yeah.
and after they died, I would boil them. And so I think it's being aware of that stuff, that you gotta, I think just being aware of that stuff is important, and trying to stay open-minded, all right, and not, um not being like closed off to that stuff. I think can be important, because and I say that because that's kind of how I would view myself in the past several years with synthetic reeds, and that I had like decided synthetic reeds weren't good and we're done. So
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, one of the things again about these particular reads, the ambi poly reads, is am I saying the right thing?
yeah,
Yeah,
ambipoly.
yeah. Um, when he started talking about breaking the read in, and said something about even something about 45 minutes, like on Barry, to like really break it in, it just conjured up some images in of things that I was like, no, that's not. I don't want to break a reed in.
Yeah,
I don't want. I
yeah.
don't want to pair the reed to the mouthpiece. I don't know. No, I just want to be able to slap it on there, and it just rips. That's what I want. And that's why the
Absolutely.
synthetic thing is appealing to me.
Hmm.
Now, I will say, because I haven't actually played the reeds yet, um, what it is that he's discussing could be a really fine nuance point, and it could have
Yeah.
almost and really not have the sort of impact that I think it might have. And really, what he's saying is the reed plays really great right when you start, but it's going to play even better. Now, I'm good with
Yeah.
that. I'm good with that, and it seems that that was the experience you were having, because you didn't have time really to break that reed in, did you? No, you just slapped it on,
No,
and then you started messing with it, and it was
I
and it was
played that
great.
alto reed. Yeah, I probably played the alto reed, I would say no more than 15 minutes total.
Right.
So
Yeah.
to
So
me, I
so
don't think that's had much of a break in. But it'll see, when I get closer to, I'm gonna want to shed some stuff later today on alto, and let me practice for an hour and see if it's different, and maybe there is a break-in point. And but yeah, I'm not sure with that stuff.
yeah.
But
Uh,
it's interesting. The other thing that I thought was fascinating, this kind of leads us into the next thing, just because I, kind of like looking at some of the accessories and stuff I have on my desk, is that
sure.
the ambi-poly reeds are workable. And that was probably the thing
Oh
I was
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
the
yeah,
most
yeah.
intrigued with. Because when I was younger, was around people that were really into working on reeds. And so I kind of learned how to do that stuff. And I own a Reed Geek, which is kind of the next kind of accessory thing I have mine. It's just this little piece of steel that has sharp edges and some other kind of special things on the ends. And you use this to, make cuts
Right.
and work on reeds. And that was something, and you were exactly right about some of the synthetic reeds where it's like, oh, I either like it or I don't. And it's almost so consistent that if this isn't a good read for you, then you're done. There's no
Yeah.
flexibility. There's
No
no,
flex. No
yeah.
flex.
So it's interesting to see that the ambipoly are designed to be sanded. I mean, he even had that in the presentation. You can use a Read Geek on this specifically, like that tool,
No.
knives and sandpaper. And I think that stuff was interesting because I hadn't seen that with other synthetics. But yeah, and like I said, I used to do some work on reeds. I never got super crazy with the reed treatments. And what I noticed that I do now is usually I play reeds out of the box, and I'll, I soak them, get them, just in my mouth. I don't use water or anything. Um, I usually play it for a few minutes. If it's good or better, then I will usually use a reed geek and I will level the back. You're just taking a little fine amount of material off. And then I do a light test. So I take it over to a light, and you're kind of looking for a certain shape in the tip, and I'll kind of make some adjustments to kind of have that be more even or more pronounced or whatever. But I joke about it, like reeds, I don't only have so much time to care about it. So there's a certain point where I will work on it a little bit, and then if it's still not a great read, I just throw it away and I move on to the next read. Something else I do that's interesting with reeds that is different for other people who use cane is I play one read at a time. I
Yep.
don't cycle. I, um, I don't like go through them, or this, I played for 20 minutes, so I'm breaking in these reads, and these reads are getting better. I sit there and I play, and I got a good one, and I will use the read geek on it a little bit, and then it works or it doesn't, and then I play it until it dies. And I notice reeds seems like and I also will change, the position on the reed or where my ligature is, and I make all those improvements, and then I'm adjusting myself. And I always joke that I used to, especially in grad school, partly because I was cheap. I would take a read until it died the second time, and then you really know it's over. It would die, and then I would adjust it, and then it would come back, and then it would die again, and then usually that meant it was time to find another read. But I know some players who have a whole system where they mark
Yeah.
this read I've been playing this many days, and I never got that into it. Not
Yeah,
not
I
that it's
can't
not
do it.
valid. It's just I just don't have the
Yeah.
time. I don't,
Yeah. I
you know.
couldn't do it. I'm the one read guy too, at a time. Even when I was doing cane, one read at a time, and then uh, no. But I don't do. I would do no adjustments. I wasn't cutting on the
Oh,
reed. I wasn't leveling the reed. I wasn't soaking the reed. I was not doing anything. And and either the reed played or it didn't. If it played, then I could get a few hours of hard playing out of the reed, and then the reed was done.
yeah,
And that just became, like I said, it just became so expensive. I just so even with the Leger American cut, which I think is a really good reed, um, I'm getting I basically get 2 months out of a reed. And I
yeah,
know other folks get a lot longer out of reeds. Now, one thing that they were claiming was that they have a 6 month guarantee, but that there's 12 months with the ambipoly reeds. But they are routinely seeing 12 months out of a reed. Now, that's something that I would be very interested in. If I can get a reed, even if I could get a reed to last for 4 months instead of 2 months,
yeah,
that's I'm going to be saving. That's half the bread in reeds. Because the reeds
hmm
are pretty comparable price.
yeah. And I think it's interesting. It's interesting enough to really take a deep dive at it. So I'm glad they were able to send that, um, and so that's been good. I also wanted to mention some of the other Read Geeks and stuff.
Sure.
They have a few different models that are a little bit different. This one has a handle and stuff like that. I know the guy who owns Reed Geek, and I use some of his other products as well. And I want to try to get him to come in for our students either in person or um, on Zoom and talk about like how to use these and how to work on reads a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially if the ambipolys are workable, but even for some of
Yeah.
our students that are still using cane, just to have
Yeah.
that skill and to know what to look for. Because I have students, I'll like look at a box of reads and I'm like, oh, that one's not good, that one's not good, and they're like, oh, how do you know? And it's like, well, I know how this is supposed to be cut, the parts of the read and stuff, and I think that stuff is important. So that's some of those other products. I'm trying to think of other saxophone stuff. So the other one, and this is a brand that I endorse, is a saxophone accessory line called Key Leaves. And Key Leaves does not make anything that you play with. They make all kind of stuff for your case. Might be a good way to think about it.
Right.
So I have a few of them. Probably, I think the thing they're most known for is the actual key leaves itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and these are key props, so they hold open your low C sharp, which also opens up your G sharp, and then it opens up your D sharp, your E flat key, because those keys stay closed and they trap moisture, and a lot of times you get sticky pads. You get stuff that that will lead your G sharp to stick. It'll lead those keys to stick. Probably also because you're not using them, especially low C sharp, not using that as much, certainly than you would G sharp or E flat. And this is just helps them to air out and design. And that was his original product, and then he really has kind of built a great product line out of that. The other one that I use probably most is this, which is a gap cap. And it's a specially designed end plug. I'm trying to line up the camera here. Am I doing it?
Yeah, I can see
Where
it.
is it? You can see it. So it's designed that even though I put this cap in, I have all of this airflow ability. So I'm not actually putting like a solid cap on the end, which is interesting. In my talks with the guy who owns it, his name is Rulon Brown. With Rulon, uh, he said something interesting. He said saxophone is the only instrument that does this. Clarinets don't cap, oboes don't do that stuff. No other woodwind instrument. Brass certainly doesn't like put a stop or a plug on the end of the instrument. And the other thing that's nice about this, and this was something because I use an aftermarket case, and that's something else we could talk about. But I use for my Mark VI, I have a BAM Cabine tenor case, and those cases are designed to kind of be one size fits all, which really means they don't fit any horn super well. Right? They're not designed to fit anything. They're designed to fit everything. And what's nice about this cap, if you kind of look closely, the end plug itself, the green part is threaded. And so you can customize the length of the cap. This is probably about half the total length it could be. And what that does is it helps to create a more snug fit for the horn in your case. So that way it doesn't slide and move around a little bit, which leads to it getting out of alignment. I really like these. I have my alto one is here. And then it has a locking little lug nut, so that way it stays that certain size. These are great. I recommend these to everybody. It really, really helps. It also helps to dry out if you get any kind of corrosion on pads or anything in your upper stacks, like high D, E flat, and F keys. It helps to just make sure there's airflow there. And so these are really great. Another product they make is this, which is it's a permanent dollar bill for pads. So we've
Oh
all,
yeah.
hey, do you have a dollar? Hey, you have a dollar, right? If you're really doing well as a musician, you use a $5 bill.
Uh,
And but this is effectively a washable dollar bill. It's a washable like wiper. And it has the top side is a little bit more absorbent, and then the back has, and it's probably impossible to see, But it has all these grooves in it, so it's a little bit more abrasive, and so you can put it in and pull it out. Stays in my case all the time. I don't ever have to worry about it. That's another one of their really great products. They make other stuff too. One of the things that I know we were just checking out is this thumb plate. And this piece replaces the hook. You know, all saxophones come with a hook on them, thumb hook, which I think a lot of us aren't, just like, saxophones have hooks and kind of, that's just normal. But really, if you think about it, the point of a neck strap is to hold all the weight of the instrument. I don't want to have really any weight in either one of my hands. And the top part of the saxophone already has a thumb pad, so you can't hold it. But the hook kind of suggests that you can hold it a little bit. And so this is a replacement for that. And it just kind of goes on. And the one that I have on my tenor is brass, and the one that I have on my alto is plastic. And it basically forces me to, or it doesn't allow me to have any weight in that hand. It has to be in the neck strap. And, if you're playing and you get carpal tunnel, for sure, that could be a part of it. But even just any kind of discomfort, I've had students that their wrists will start to be sore, or their finger or their thumb themselves. I certainly, when I was practicing, and I know this is true for a lot of us, I spent long enough playing saxophone that I have, like a permanent mark. I have like a callus and like,
Oh,
like
yeah.
permanently. Yeah, I actually have, if I look at my thumb where that was, like I'm like missing, like some of the hair on my hand is not there. What got
Oh,
worn
yeah.
away
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
playing
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
And this kind of just eliminates all that stuff. And that's a very new product. And so I really like that. It took me a few minutes to get used to it. Certainly, spend years and years and years playing with a hook. It's weird at first, but what I noticed for myself is that when I went back, it was like, oh, this is terrible. And now I'm totally on board for that. I haven't tried it on Barry yet, but kind of getting to that. And then speaking of thumb things, this isn't saxophone, but it's thumb related. You can tell that I'm into this stuff. Is kind of an alternative thumb hook thing that I use on my clarinet. And I do not remember the brand name on this. Can't think of it at all. But it's interesting. So it's a two-piece design for clarinet that has this plate that it attaches to. Then it goes on and it clicks in. And it's fully adjustable. So the height is adjustable. The thumb piece is adjustable. And what it does is it offsets the load on your thumb, right? Because on clarinet, it's different than saxophone, unless you are using a neck strap. But I think most players don't use a neck strap on clarinet. I have to have the weight of the instrument on that thumb, and so what this does is it makes it much easier for my hand position to have that weight as close in as possible, so that way I'm not generating nearly as much torque on my wrist, and it sits. And then it also wraps around, so I can sit there and it's kind of gripping my hand a little bit better. It's very stable. I got this kind of on a whim. We actually have a student in the studio that had one on their clarinet, and I had never seen one before. And I was like, what the heck is that? And showed it to me. And
initials JS.
yes. And I was really impressed with it right away. And similar with the thing I have on my saxophone, it took me a little bit to feel normal, but it felt really good. And now I used to have like a little gel cushion, but the clarinet that I have, the thumb, and a lot of newer clarinets have an adjustable up and down. and mine
Yep.
didn't have that. So that was kind of made it even more of interest because I was gaining even more functionality. But I can't imagine not having it now. Um, so yeah,
And I
so
checked. I checked, and apparently there's you can either get one that has a also has the strap hook on it, or you can like add the strap hook to it. There's some kind of way to do that. So
oh, interesting,
so you
yeah.
could actually play the clarinet with that thumb with the thumb attachment, but with a neck strap if that's something, because that's something that I suggest that students use the strap when they're, especially students that they're getting started with the clarinet, because
Mm,
it can kind of force you to sort of play with a certain embouchure, because it's hard to get your hand, if you put the strap in the right position, it's harder to push the instrument out to try to get that sort of
yeah,
straight
that's true.
embouchure. And then also because on most clarinets, the thumb rest thing is really small, and so it's putting quite a
Yeah.
bit of weight in a really small area. So that's another reason why I will have them use a strap on their clarinet. So it's good that this, which I think is could be actually a solution, make it so that they didn't actually need a strap. But that plus the strap seems like that could be a good combination.
Yeah, and that's I don't have a lot of experience with using a neck strap on clarinet, but I think that's a really interesting way to think about it, almost as like a corrective, almost like training wheels for the angle. That's really, really interesting. I will have to check that out, just even for myself, but that's really, really interesting. Yeah. So,
Yeah. So,
um,
but real quick, since we're talking clarinet, I'll just say what my
yeah.
gear is on clarinet. Um, I'm playing on an Andino clarinet, and I actually have a hard rubber, and then I also have a wood. My main one is the wood clarinet. Um, and they don't make these anymore. It's a company that was sort of acquired by Gemeinhardt, and now they make basically a Gemeinhardt clarinet, which I think is heavily borrowing from the Andino design. Um, but so that's the clarinet that I'm playing. It's a good clarinet. It's kind of middle of the road. And for my barrel, I'm playing on a pine barrel, Pyne, and that's Jim Pine, who was the professor of clarinet at Ohio State for many years. So in that barrel is a 64, and then I'm
Okay.
playing on let's see, an M30 Profile 88 Van Doren mouthpiece, with let's see here, I'm playing European cut. Honestly, I'd have to look at my clarinet to tell you the number on that reed, but it's a European cut Leger reed. Um, and the ligature is a Francois Louis Ultimate ligature, but it's the kind that is uh, so they had two different styles. Basically, they have the style where the plate is, let's see here. Okay, so the one that I have is where the top sort of ratchets like this in and out, right? Whereas the
Oh,
other style, like the one that's on my tenor, the screw is on the bottom and then it gets tighter. The one that I have has a post that goes through that's threaded, and so you do this, and it kind of does this to get tight on the. So the where the plate is actually not moving. That's stationary, right? And so I have that. So I have that style
oh,
of Francois Louis Ultimate ligature on my clarinet and also on my bass clarinet. It's the same. It's the same design. Um, yeah. So that's what that is. And on bass clarinet, I'm playing the it's a what is it? It's a Van Doren mouthpiece. I honestly I don't even know what the number on it. It's a really old mouthpiece, but it's a Van Doren
yeah.
mouthpiece, and I'm playing on a Francois Lee Ultimate France Louis Ultimate Ligature, and then the reed is a. I'm actually playing on a tenor sax reed because the
Oh,
shape is the same, and at least at the time that I bought that reed, they didn't have an American cut for bass clarinet, and I wanted an American cut. So
yeah, I don't think they do. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, well, we'll have to. I think that we're. This is begging for a part three. I think we have more equipment stuff
we,
to talk
we
about.
didn't hardly get through anything.
We got mouthpieces. We got ligatures to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's kind of interesting. I might be personally in the market for a new bass clarinet. I was talking about getting a new instrument, but I've kind of figured out a couple of things, and I think having a better reed has made a difference. But maybe a different mouthpiece and stuff because I just have a Selmer C Star, which is fine, but I'm kind of in the position where I've been playing actually more bass clarinet that I haven't in a while, and this On the Town show has a good amount of bass clarinet, and well, it has a lot of exposed bass clarinet. I don't play much bass clarinet, but when I am playing bass clarinet, it's like solos. There's like a 4 measure segment where like I am the only person playing, and of course, it sits on the sand for like 45 minutes to an hour, and then I have like 8 measures to switch from B flat clarinet to bass clarinet, and then I play a solo. And
That's why you need a
I
synthetic
just kind
reed.
of have.
By the way, you're
I
promoting
know.
synthetic
Well,
reeds right
luckily I'm
now.
playing on. Yeah, I'm very happy with the synthetic reed on that because I have the European 3. But I kind of am wondering if a better mouthpiece would help, and I use a Silverstein ligature for that as well, and those are fantastic. Makes a big difference compared to what some of the other ones I've used, but I'm kind of seeing the mouthpiece as the weak point right now. So, but we can talk about that stuff kind of more in the future.
Sure.
I think it would be good to discuss mouthpieces and other
Yep.
things too.
Definitely. All right. Well, good good talk, and we will convene again next week, same time, for another Tenor Talks. So y'all have a good day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.